Beneath the gentle waves of Egypt's Abu Qir Bay, divers' flashlights reveal carved stone and broken statues on the seafloor. These silent ruins are all that remain of Canopus, a once glittering city at the western mouth of the Nile Delta. Long before Alexandria rose to prominence, Canopus thrived as a vital port and holy city, a cosmopolitan haven where Egyptian pharaohs, Greek adventurers, and Roman elites all left their mark. Ancient poets and historians traced Canopus's origins to myth. The Greek legend claimed it was named after Canopus, the fallen helmsman of Menelaus of Troy, who was bitten by a serpent on these shores. In his memory, the story goes, Menelaus built a monument here, around which a town took root. Whatever its true founding, by the first millennium BCE, Canopus was already old. The lawgiver Solon lauded it in a 6th century BCE poem, and Herodotus later called it an ancient port, suggesting its heritage stretched deep into pharaonic times. From the start, Canopus's identity was entwined with the divine. The city hosted a famous temple of Serapis, a Greco-Egyptian god forged from the fusion of Osiris and Apis, and pilgrims flocked to its sanctuaries seeking healing and wisdom. In fact, the mysteries of Osiris were celebrated here with great fervor. Once a year, a ceremonial barge would carry an effigy of Osiris from the neighboring city of Heraklion down the canals to Canopus, uniting the two cities in a sacred festival of death and rebirth. According to the decree of Canopus, this annual procession drew celebrants to consecrate Osiris in Canopus's temple on the appointed day of the Egyptian calendar. One can imagine the scene. The Nile's calm waters illuminated by torchlight as priests in white linens escort the barge, the air thick with incense and hymns, and throngs of devotees lining the banks awaiting the god who would bring fertility and renewal to the land. Canopus's religious allure was matched by its worldly importance. Strategically positioned on the Canopic branch of the Nile, the city became the principal gateway for Greek trade into Egypt before Alexandria was founded in the 4th century BCE. Merchants unloaded exotica on its quays, fragrant cedar from Lebanon, olive oil and wine from the Aegean, while Egyptian henna and grain flowed out in return. Archaeologists have found red granite columns and monumental inscriptions here bearing the cartouche of Ramses II, evidence that even the great New Kingdom pharaohs had an imprint on Canopus, perhaps through later rulers who brought such relics to adorn the city. The Ptolemaic kings of Egypt certainly patronized Canopus. Ptolemy III Euergetes not only convened a grand synod of priests here, resulting in the Canopus decree, but he also erected a temple to Osiris, reinforcing the city's status as a holy site. Meanwhile, just outside Canopus, an older shrine to Heracles, mentioned by Herodotus, served as a sanctuary for runaway slaves, illustrating the blend of Greek and Egyptian traditions along this coast. By the late Hellenistic era, Canopus was a city of cultural fusion and contrast. Traditional Egyptian beliefs thrived alongside Hellenic influences. One peculiar local custom worshipped Osiris in the form of a human-headed vessel, an iconography that later misled early Egyptologists to name funerary organ jars, canopic jars, after this town. The city's streets must have teemed with a polyglot mix: Egyptian sailors, Greek pilgrims, Libyan farmers, and visiting nobles from distant Rome. All came to partake in Canopus's offerings, whether commerce or communion with the divine. As the sun set over the Mediterranean, the temples would glow with lamplight and prayer, heralding an era in which Canopus stood as both a spiritual beacon and a bustling Nile Delta port. Little did its citizens suspect that the same waters bringing fortune and faith to their city would one day rise to swallow it whole. At its height, Canopus presented a tableau of both piety and pleasure, a dual nature captured vividly by those who experienced it. Imagine a warm evening in the 1st century, under the fading Egyptian sun, pilgrims shuffle into the columned sanctuary of Serapis. Inside the temple's incense-laden halls, even dignified men of learning cast aside skepticism, seeking cures from the god's oracles. The geographer Strabo marveled that the Serapeum of Canopus was so revered it attracted even the most reputable men to come spend the night within its walls, hoping to receive healing visions in their dreams. By day, the sacred precinct bustled with those offering sacrifices and thanks for answered prayers. By night, however, a different scene unfolded on the waterways. Flotillas of partygoers from Alexandria drifted down the canal toward Canopus, music and laughter echoing over the dark Nile. Strabo recounts how each evening the canal was crowded with boats full of revelers playing the flute and dancing without restraint, men and women. indulging in licentious merrymaking, while along the shore the locals catered to this constant carnival. Thus, Canopus gained a reputation as an unabashed resort town, the Las Vegas of antiquity, even as it remained a holy city for seekers of miracles. Roman authors alternately romanticized and reviled this indulgent atmosphere. The philosopher Seneca, writing in the mid-1st century CE, advised his friend that a wise man looking for a moral life will not select Canopus as a residence, for it had become a resort of vice, where luxury pampers itself to the utmost degree. Seneca paints the scene in unsparing terms: drunken revelers staggering along the moonlit beach, riotous sailing parties on the lagoon, and taverns ringing with song. A place where, once the restraints of law and order loosened at night, debauchery was flaunted openly. The satirist Juvenal similarly snarled about the debauchery prevalent in Canopus, cementing the city's image in Roman literature as a byword for extravagance. And yet, despite the sneers of moralists, Canopus remained a magnet for pleasure seekers across the empire. Even Emperor Hadrian was enchanted. After reveling in Canopus's delights during a trip to Egypt, he ordered a replica of its canal-side resort built at his villa in Tivoli, Italy, complete with Egyptian statues and an artificial Nile, a personal theme park of Canopus to remind him of the good times enjoyed there. The juxtaposition was striking. On one hand, austere priests carrying Osiris's barge in solemn procession; on the other, festive crowds toasting with wine as harps played. This unique cultural milieu persisted into the late Roman era, but changes loomed on the horizon. As Christianity spread through Egypt in the 4th century CE, the old pagan temples came under attack. Canopus's great shrine of Serapis Osiris, once the heart of the city, was destroyed by zealous Christian iconoclasts. In its place rose a large Christian monastery, for even in destruction Canopus's sacred aura endured. This monastery became famous for housing the relics of saints, and pilgrims continued to arrive seeking miraculous cures, now invoking Christian God instead of the old gods. For a time, the site's spiritual legacy merely changed guise, from pagan healing temple to Christian healing shrine, as incense and liturgies replaced the ancient rites. Yet even as faith persisted, the earth beneath Canopus began to falter. Nature itself dealt the final blow to the city's glory. The Nile Delta has always been restless land, and Canopus's foundations sat on precarious ground. Tremors occasionally shivered the region, the coastline eroded, and the sea level inched upward. Sometime around the end of the 2nd century BCE, ironically, about the time Canopus reached the peak of its prosperity, a massive earthquake or subsidence event caused the eastern quarters of the city to collapse into the sea. This was a harbinger of worse to come. Over the ensuing centuries, earthquakes, tsunamis, and liquefaction of the soil continued to weaken Canopus's footing. The once proud metropolis began literally to break apart. Temples cracked, waterfront blocks sank, and seawater seeped into the streets. Geology and hydrology conspired to seal Canopus's fate. A cataclysm in the 8th century CE, possibly a combination of a devastating quake and a colossal flood, finally sent most of what remained of Canopus plunging beneath the Mediterranean. The city of revels and rituals vanished beneath the waves, drowned and entombed in silence. Its western fringes that survived became the modest fishing village of Abu Qir, while the rest of Canopus lay hidden underwater, its decadence and devotions alike lost to memory. For over 1,000 years, Canopus slept beneath the sea, a sunken enigma. Fishermen casting their nets in Abu Qir Bay had no idea that just below their boats lay colossal statues and the rubble of temples. Scholars knew Canopus only from dusty texts, Strabo's tales, church records of saints, and the faint echo of its name in canopic jars. Many deemed it a legend. That changed at the turn of the 21st century. In the late 1990s, a team led by underwater archaeologist Frank Goddio scoured the bay with high-tech survey equipment. In 2000, their scanners detected symmetrical anomalies on the seabed. Divers descended 5 miles off today's coast and found, to their astonishment, a row of massive stone ruins stretching over 150 meters. Over subsequent dives, a lost city revealed itself. They discovered red granite columns and broken sphinxes half buried in sand, the paved floors of a 105-meter harbor, and remnants of what appeared to be a grand temple's walls. Canopus had been found, remarkably preserved in its watery grave. Excavations over the next decades brought treasures of Canopus back to light. In one season, divers carefully raised a colossal quartzite sphinx statue emblazoned with the royal cartouche of Pharaoh Ramses II, a poignant reminder of Canopus's ties to Egypt's mighty dynasties. Nearby, they retrieved a headless granite torso of a Ptolemaic queen and a stunning white marble head of a Roman nobleman, its lifelike gaze speaking to the city's cosmopolitan mix. Sunken hoards of coins and ceramics told a story of continuous habitation, stamped amphorae and currency ranging from pharaohs to Greeks, Romans, Byzantines. One cache of gold coins bore the profile of an 8th century Arab ruler, evidence that life in Canopus persisted into Islamic times before the final deluge. In the ruins of the Serapis temple, archaeologists uncovered the broken pieces of the naos of the decades, a famed black granite shrine from the 4th century BCE, as well as a magnificent marble head of Serapis himself, still radiating an aura of majesty despite centuries under the sea. Every artifact, from humble Byzantine oil lamps to gigantic statues of gods, added a chapter to the tale of Canopus, confirming its legacy as a place of splendor, diversity, and long-enduring significance. As these relics resurface, cleaned of encrustation and displayed in museums, they speak not only to the history of Canopus, but to a universal human story. The rise and fall of Canopus carries echoes from the great cautionary tales of world religions and philosophies about the fate of proud, opulent cities. In Islamic tradition, the Quran warns of ancient peoples who grew arrogant in their prosperity and were punished by divine wrath. It invokes the example of Ad, the people of the legendary city of Iram, who had lofty pillars, the likes of whom had never been created in the land. They, along with Samud, who carved homes in the rock, and Pharaoh, who built mighty structures, all transgressed in the land and spread corruption. So their Lord unleashed on them a scourge of punishment. Likewise, the Hebrew Bible and Christian New Testament remember Sodom and Gomorrah, cities said to be so decadent and cruel that God rained fire from heaven to wipe them out, leaving only ashes as a lesson. These biblical cities became enduring symbols of human wickedness and divine retribution. The Hebrew prophets also thundered against the hubris of places like Tyre and Babylon, predicting that their glittering walls would crumble to dust under God's judgment. In Christian scripture's final book of Revelation, Babylon the Great, a metaphor for a corrupt empire, boasts, "I sit as queen, and shall never mourn, only to be destroyed in a single day. Her fall lamented with the cry, 'In 1 hour your doom has come.'" Eastern traditions, too, reflect on the impermanence of worldly glory. Hindu lore tells of Dvaraka, the golden city of Lord Krishna. For years it flourished, filled with palaces of crystal and silver, ringing with music and prosperity. But after Krishna's departure, the kingdom fell into disorder and excess. The ocean then rose and swallowed Dvaraka overnight. Beautiful buildings submerged one by one. There was no trace of the city, says the Mahabharata. Dvaraka was just a name, just a memory. And in the philosophy of the ancient Greeks, we find the allegory of Atlantis, an advanced island civilization that grew proud and unjust, and was ultimately sunk beneath the waves by the wrath of the gods. From the Quran to Plato, from the Bible to the Mahabharata, the message resounds. No city, no matter how powerful, wealthy, or revered, is immune to decline and destruction, especially if it falls into arrogance, decadence, or moral decay. The story of Canopus, once lost and now found, is a tangible testament to that truth. The broken columns and statues of Canopus rest not only in archaeological exhibits, but still in situ on the seafloor, where fish dart around toppled obelisks and seabed sands cover the paved avenues where priests and drunkards alike once trod. It is a haunting scene of tranquility, as if nature herself has drawn a veil over the city's former vivacity. Canopus's legacy is thus twofold. In historical terms, it's a reminder of the rich tapestry of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman civilization, a place of cross-cultural exchange, religious fervor, and legendary revelry. But in a broader spiritual sense, Canopus stands as a mute yet potent memento mori, a reminder that even the mightiest cities can become underwater ruins in the blink of an eye of geologic time. Its luxurious halls and sacred shrines, once so full of life, now lie in the domain of fishes and coral. The lesson of Canopus is the lesson of impermanence. Human glory is fleeting. Stone and marble ultimately yield to sand and sea. In the end, all that endures is the story, a story that urges humility before the forces of nature and the divine. The lost city of Canopus, risen again through archaeology, invites us to ponder the fate of all great cities, and to heed the ancient wisdom that pride precedes downfall and time conquers all.